Welcome back. I hope you guys had a good day. Last time on Dragon Ball Z, I asked you guys if Godric could beat Elden Ring if he were to play it. This is my favorite response. And then I thought, why not just beat the game with the Grafted Dragon? I actually really like this weapon. It has a neat design, amazing weapon art. It's one of those niche weapons that nobody really pays attention to, so I wanted to see how powerful it can become. So yeah, I'm going to use only the Grafted Dragon, transforming it from a mere lizard puppet into a gauntlet of destruction. The goal here is to see how good of a weapon it can become, and at the very end, I'll give you my review, so to speak. I already did so with the Weathered Straight Sword, so it's kind of like we're starting a new mini-series with the challenge runs of testing out certain weapons, just to see how good they are throughout the entire game. So without further ado, my name is Josh, also known as and I hope you enjoy. I started with a Confessor class because faith is important, and I shall name him the Rizzler. For the first time in all of my runs, and every single time I've played this game, I actually beat the Grafted Scion. I am truly evolving as a player. Now, Margit and Godric, obviously, I cannot take down with the Grafted Dragon, so therefore, they must be removed from the equation before anything else can take place. Perfect. Now that we have the weapon for the run, let's do some setup for once before we take on Renala. We got the Radagon Source Seal, the Dragon Flail, just to get some runes out here. We got the Golden Vow Ash of War. We save Alexander, even though I kind of want to kill him because it's 10% versus 15, and that 15 comes later on in the game, but I saved him for this run. I also grabbed the Howl of Shabriri because the Grafted Dragon requires Faith, this also requires Faith, and is a huge boost in damage, so, I mean, why not? We also got the Faith Knot tier to increase our faith to use Howl of Shabriri, the Flame Shrouding tier, Cracked tier, whatever it was called, and lastly, the Ritual Sword Talisman. For now. I did a quick test against the Falling Star Beast.
Wow. Dude, my nipples are so hard. That was awesome.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I also got the Fire Scorpion Charm. Now, we don't have everything just yet, but that's pretty much the majority. You saw me gather everything, so I don't need to go over that. But let me just tell you that my character is incredibly frail. I mean, think about it. With Howl of Shabriri, I take 30% more damage. Radagon Source Seal, I take 10% more damage. And with a Scorpion Charm, that's a total of 50% extra damage. I basically have to be perfect, or at the very least, survive by just a hair. I mean, it's definitely worth it though, because nobody is able to bear witness against this weapon for very long. The damage is very nice. I mean, it does take 50 buffs for it to be viable, but I mean, that's what this run is about. My weapon is at +6 right now, and I usually get the Somber Stone 7 from the hands in front of the Dung Eater's cell, so that'll have to wait until I beat Renala and the Dragonic Tree Sentinel. I know that Volcano Manor is an option, there's one on a bridge somewhere, but one, I don't know how to get to it, and two, I didn't really feel like looking it up, so no. Renala was first, and she was, Bear
the witness.
pretty easy this time around. I mean, she's easy most of the time, but the damage here was insane. It was nothing like I've seen before. Which is interesting because I haven't really used that many buffs in any of my previous runs, so I think I'm gonna start doing that from now on. What's really cool about the weapon art is the flames that linger on the ground after the initial explosion. It's extra damage, I mean, why not? You're gonna notice that's actually very useful against later, bigger bosses, and you'll see. I noticed that the weapon art also has incredible poise, allowing me to nearly die to her positivity crystals, which is great. But regardless, Renala was taken down by the lizard puppet.
Oh, I dropped my thing. Oops!
Godfrey was a bit of a struggle because as much as I wanted to use the weapon art, he didn't really leave me much room to use it without getting split down the middle. So I had to use the melee attacks, but honestly, the damage was still pretty good. I mean, think about it like this, guys. This is only on one hand. You're usually two-handing weapons for the majority of a run, and with this weapon, you can't do that. And for the damage it's doing, yeah, it's not bad.
Bear witness!
Now, Morgott was a bit more of a problem because, I mean, I can take most of his attacks, I just kind of sat there bearing witness, but there's never a moment where I could get off a completely free weapon art. It just doesn't happen.
Yes! Boom!
And then I went to face Radahn, and I'll just let the clip speak for itself.
kind of did that as he was going up. That was pretty cool. You know, no. I think I can kill him before he goes second phase. I'm pretty sure I can. Hold on. Do your thing. Come on, just kill him! Yes! I knew it! I knew I could do it before he went second phase. Alright! That's actually a first for me. I've never done that. I've never killed Radahn before he entered second phase.
As easy as Radahn was, there was one boss that would be a stick up my rectum, and not in a good way.
What in the... Stop just being a boss that kills me. Just run, just go. Why don't you just run? You're on a horse. You're on a horse, bro. Fun times.
The fire giant was a bit of an issue. Of course, he resists most of my damage because, you know, fire. And on top of that, my buffs never stay active for the whole fight. I mean, Shabriri's Woe, I keep calling it that, Howl of Shabriri. It lasts for like 40 seconds, and honestly, that's not that long, for a fight like this especially. He deals insane damage because I take 50% more of it, so my patience was wearing thin. I basically had to be perfect this entire fight. I've come to realize that I have well planned out strategies for most bosses in Elden Ring, but the Fire Giant was one of the few where I was pretty much clueless, mainly due to the fact that he has ridiculous health. It took a few attempts, but finally I was able to kill the Fire Giant. The Foreskin Brothers were okay this time around. I never really liked this boss, and I never will. The weapon art was still pretty slow against them. I couldn't really find any good openings without getting hit. And that's the problem with many later game bosses, especially with like really cool weapon arts or attacks. You're not gonna find that many openings. You can tell that my damage was also not nearly as good as it was this late into the game. And again, like I said earlier, it doesn't help that you can't two-hand this weapon. But the strategy here was to simply stagger them into oblivion, getting inside their skin folds and just to, you know. However, while trying to summon the other guy, I could sneak in a Bear Witness or two. I just looked it up, by the way. These guys resist fire by a large margin, 40% absorption. Which, by the way, if you don't know what that means 40% of my regular damage is gone. So if I normally do 1,000 damage with that attack, 400 of it would be gone, 40%, and all the damage I would do is 600. And it makes sense because they use black flames themselves, so I get it. Still, the weapon art was powerful enough. It was time to fetch Alexander's Shard. Until I messed up. I forgot that Habriri's Showl does damage around the caster, about the same amount of damage in real life, you know, for a scream. So I had to make amends, which was the biggest pain in this entire run. The hour I wasted facing the Fire Giant, absolutely not. Cause now I had to grab the Celestial Dew and drop it in a pool or pee in it. I don't know how it works, but if I don't do it, I won't get Alexander's Shard, just the regular warrior one. After correcting my mistakes, Alexander put up a fight to not remember and he died as a warrior. But with his shard in hand, it was time to face Malekith. I actually had some pretty good RNG for the first phase because the forward swipe leaves me plenty of time to bear testimony, which he did multiple times. I got greedy though and bore witness right in his face, but luckily, it was enough damage for phase 2. Phase 2, the openings always allow for the weapon art to hit, but after that, I simply had to get lucky. I was surprised that my damage was still doing pretty good up until this point. I mean, we're almost done, and the Grafted Dragon is proving to be quite a weapon. And if you still don't believe me, look no further than the Dragon Lord himself, Flaccid Penis Boy. Now apparently the Grafted Dragon does 10% extra damage to dragons, I don't know why, but it does 5% extra damage on ancient dragons. I'm assuming Dragonlord is an ancient dragon, considering he looks as old as your mother. Before he even reached second phase, Flaccid Penis was barely alive. I mean, it makes sense because Dragonlord doesn't move around that much, and while he does hit hard, he's a big target. Plenty of room, and I mean plenty of room for bearing witness, and along with the fire underneath his entire body, yeah, this was without question one of the easiest Dragon Lord fights I've ever had.
Hey Gideon, catch.
Godfrey, much like his shadow clone, doesn't really give me much room for the weapon art. However, Godfrey himself likes to buff halfway through both phases. Once his buffing is done, the weapon art is always free. Along with charge R2's, stance breaking gives me enough time for a weapon art instead of a casual critical hit. It does more damage, so I feel like that was the better option. Second phase is a bit more tricky. Most of the time after his opener, he will scream pure testosterone, so I like to risk it and do a weapon art there. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. Same as the first phase, once he's done buffing, just bear witness. From there, I just have the fight normally. There's really no openings after that. Still, my damage was pretty good overall. Mog, on the other hand, was a bit of a handful. Much like the Fire Giant, he resists fire-based attacks, so my damage was severely lacking. Thankfully, my backup plan is to do charge R2s and get critical hits, and that's pretty much all I did for this fight. Because even the weapon art, if I could pull it off, wasn't worth the risk most of the time. The damage just wasn't really that good. This was one of the longer, more sloppy Mog fights, and even though I'm very good at this fight right now, the Grafted Dragon made sure that I would work for that bragging right, and I definitely did. Thankfully, the final boss does not resist fire at all. Couple more hits triggers the scripted slam, which is a 50-50 for a successful weapon art. On my successful attempt after he slammed down, he actually teleported away, so I was very lucky. If you pull that off, his other scripted final move will trigger, and with that amount of damage I am doing right now, it was easy to shove fire up his crotch before he came crashing down. Elden Beast wasn't actually that bad either, because much like Flaccid Penis Dragon, he's a big target. The initial explosion and fire underneath brought him down to almost half health after 3 bear witnesses. Half health after 3 bear witnesses. From there, the fight's mostly the same, but the weapon art is still a very safe option because his attacks leave an opening that large. Like, it really wasn't that difficult to sneak in 1 or 2. Definitely one of the smoothest fights in this run. And lastly, I also did Melania just for fun, and it wasn't. The weapon art just doesn't work here. She's way too fast, and even after a critical hit, trying to bear witness will most likely be met with a sword to the face. Plus, her hyper armor on like 90% of her attacks, she'll just keep on moving anyway, so it doesn't really matter. The traditional way was the only way, smacking her around with the lizard puppet, but nevertheless, we got her. So, after beating Elden Ring with the Grafted Dragon, how good was it? Let me just say that I used many buffs for this run, and the Weathered Straightsword run, I didn't use any. Comparing both my runs side by side, I can easily say that the Weathered Straightsword is actually the better weapon for numerous reasons. Firstly, the weapon art Square Off does insane damage for the sword I'm using, and incredible posture damage as well. I mean, imagine the Ash of War Square Off on an actually good straight sword. It would be ridiculous. Not to mention, you can also two-hand the freaking weapon, like, most weapons, but guess which weapon can't be two-wielded? The Weathered Straightsword also does only physical damage, which obviously all bosses are kinda weak to. Some are more resistant than others, but not nearly as much as fire, because the Grafted Dragon does mostly fire damage, so bosses that are resistant to fire don't really care that much. However, bosses that were weak to fire or had little to no resistance, the damage was incredible. The main strength of this weapon was the weapon art, and if I couldn't use it, then it became the unfortunate lizard puppet that I called it in the beginning of this video. The weapon art itself is really good, but hard to master when finding openings. The Weathered Straightsword didn't really care about openings as the weapon art lunged forward and was much quicker. Overall, the Grafted Dragon was still a decent weapon, but that's all it'll ever be. Decent. That being said, I'm giving this weapon a 4.5 out of 10, which was worse than the Weathered Straightsword, believe it or not. And that's about it, fellow friends and family. Thank you so much for watching. I wanted this video to be more chill because I wasn't even going to upload it. I thought, I didn't really record my reaction to the bosses too much. My comedy wasn't really there. But if you made it this far, thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. And be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone, and of course, stay safe.